Recording is in progress. Good evening, y'all. This is Go Platoon. It is weekends, Golf Platoon, week 2, day 1. Talk about looping. Should be a lot of review. You'd be hard pressed to get this far without some form of looping. In fact, did a lot of looping last week. But we're going to dig right up into it and talk about some different types of looping, how to loop through dictionaries. 2 types of looping in JavaScript. Also, it's not on here, but I want to talk to you all about list comprehension. I don't think we actually get into that in this course, but it's pretty handy. So, looping. We sure talked about this my last class. I know I did, because I can't talk about looping without for of and for in. I don't want to iterate ever with an I unless I have to, an indexer. I don't want to have to set a value and reference that value to the list of another value of equal or lesser value and potentially go out of range, go into range, not get them all, get too many, and break my code. These are great. This is going to look at a list, or actually, I think they kind of work out for objects as well, and just step through them. For each of them, I'm going to do one thing. If you want the index, if you want the list, or sorry, the values, if you want both, you could use the index, and then you do have both. You just got to reference it towards, the original value. But since this is a review, let's blast into it real quick. For of in JavaScript, for of loops allow us to iterate over iterable objects such as arrays, strings, sets, maps, and other custom objects that implement the iterable protocol. JavaScript. So if we had an array, some array, I mean, this isn't going to actually run, is it? For let variable name of array will let us iterate through each of those things. I don't like this. Let's come up with a better thing here. Colors. Blue. Red. Oh, well, you do have to console.log things. Thanks. Check it out. Using the power of for of, we're getting the values. Keep in mind, we cannot modify the array using. This is not referencing that list. We're just getting our own variables here. We're doing something with those variables, agnostic of the list. You can take this value, each of these variables, they're a new thing. They have no, you can't really use when you have key value pairs. And I know this is a list and not an object, but the value is worthless to you. I'm getting a little off topic here, but like if we have things like age, a man is 50 years old, 59 years old. I can reference man by age and get something from it. That's the key. Without a key, I can't do anything, right? I can't say man 59 and it's going to know, oh, you're talking about age? That's not really, that doesn't work. In the same way, these variables are their own thing. I'm basically instantiating new variables based off of this list. I cannot reference it backwards. However, if this was a for in, notice we're getting the indexes. These are just numbers. Also, I can't do anything with them. I can't say, 1 is in every array ever. I'm going to have 0, 1, 2 continuing on. But what I can do with these things is, use them as keys. Everything's kind of an object if you think about it, to get stuff back out of it. So why would you want to do this? I don't know. Maybe later I'm going to do something with, I'm going to keep some counter is plus equal, the index. Maybe I want to know the total number if you add up all the indexes, but rather variable name. You have to reference it in relation back to the original list with the indices. That's what this is talking about here. You can't mutate this array with the values. You would need the indices to do something, back towards it. Does that make sense? Am I losing y'all? Or am I beating this dead horse?
Following.
Excellent.
Is
Another
this kind of like a shortcut for a for loop? The whole let equal and all that. Is this just a shortcut for it basically, or is there another reason you're saying that this would actually be better to use?
I say better. What I mean is more concise, more specific. If I want to do something with every value or indices, this is the way I go about it. Keeping track of some arbitrary number and using that to loop has merit, but this is more concise and more specific to this array. This is only going to look at this array and each value in it, each indices in it. It's not some number like, with your other, goodness gracious, if you're saying your array is equal to the length of your iterator is not greater than the length of the array, that's still just a length of the array. If that array changed and you're still looking at the length of the old array, I don't want to get into all that. I would rather look at each individual indices or value of the indices for my array. That's a me thing. There are reasons why you would need an iterator to keep track of stuff if it's going to go back up and down, maybe, right? If we're going to iterate through an array and go back and keep track of where the indices was, that would be a reason why you'd want to do that, perhaps. You would have a very difficult time looking through a list in reference to other places in the list if you don't really keep track of what your iterator is.
You're referencing like a binary search if you're trying to make pointers throughout the array.
Right. If I need to go backwards an X number of times, or I need to keep track of an X number of times, you could probably still get that done in a lot of ways with the indices of a for in loop. But the more complicated that gets, the more it starts to make sense to have an agnostic iterator to kind of do things with, keep track of stuff with. I don't have a quick example to pull out, but it's because those are few and far between.
Are you not able to control the step this way? Like, because when you do like the whole long way, at the very end, you can go I plus plus or I minus minus.
This is going to go from indices 0 to your last. I don't know. You would have to get fancy with it if you wanted to go backwards, right? You would have to reverse this array and then iterate backwards through it, right? So I guess that's another point if you want to start at the end and come down. You also, what if I didn't want to start? What if I want to start in the middle, right? This ain't going to get that done. This has to go left or right. 90% of the time, that's good enough for me. But when you're getting into more complicated searches, yeah, keeping an agnostic iterator can be very useful. So another variation of JavaScript's for loop is the for in loop, which we just talked about, aka the keys, aka the indices, possibly. But like I was kind of getting into, we're talking about keys. So I can iterate through a object using this. I can get the key. John Doe 50 looks good to me. That could be useful if I need to keep track of the key. Maybe I want to use this key to search other objects that have the same. Maybe not the most bulletproof solution, but that could be a way to do that. But let us not forget, because this is kind of the same thing as this thing, right? That shouldn't change anything. Did I break it? Oh, I'm too confident. What's going on here? For let key of person.
Just in, right? Instead of up. Is it in?
Well, I wanted to do of. Ooh, you can't do this in an object. Is that what I was trying to show you? Person is not iterable. So, flew too close to the sun there. Thought my JavaScript knowledge was going to pay off. But this is why, this is the way you're going to iterate through an object in JavaScript. You need the indices because it gets the key. That makes sense, Jordan. Yeah. All right, cool. Bunch of hoopla. Let's get to Python, eh? For loops in Python. I don't love some of these either. My memories of getting into Python were, oh, did I stop sharing? Not what I was trying to do. Back to it. My memories of early Python was constantly that indices does not exist. That, that doesn't, you've gone too far. There's no such thing as list for or whatever. That's because I was trying to do JavaScript and Python. I wasn't doing very Pythonic ways of searching through these lists. I was in love with using the indices and iterating and whatnot. I was like, how do I do that with Python? I just want to do the same exact thing. Well, it's not built for that. Python's not built like that. Here, I don't love that we got this here, but I will teach it. If you want to directly access every value in interval, you can simply do that in Python. So this is very similar to JavaScript, but don't get your head wrapped around for of and for in, because in Python, it's for in. That will get us the values. Make sense? Kind of swapped. I think JavaScript and Python are so similar that you end up jacking yourself up a lot of the time. Oh no, that's not the right one. What happened, gang? There we go. Let's get that other one out here. I'm not lying. All right, we're not running into that problem again. Just Python. So Bob says hi, Sally says hi, Frank says hi. We iterated through and we got the value, because in Python, for in is not the index. It's for whatever in a list. And we can print it, iterate through. Sounds good. Easy peasy. Most of the time, this is how you're going to be iterating. You also could use a range. This is where I see people lose their minds. Print all integers from 0 to 10, or I in range. Print I. Let's see how that works. This works out well because we're not telling it where to start. We're just telling it how far to go. Where does it start? Starts at 0. Not to get too into Python. Goodness, brain, help me out here. Functions, modules, methods. But range can take 2 arguments. Is that going to change it? It sure is. Don't need to know every Python method ever, but what I've seen a lot of is people trying to iterate, and they start at 1. And 1's no good. Maybe 1 is good. But what I'll also see here, I'll show you how I see people mess up a lot. Animal list. Oh, oops. I understand. I need to put brackets around it. Good. What's your favorite? Oh, we got a split here. All right. Oh my God, not helpful. All right. If I were a JavaScript pro, been doing JavaScript for 2 weeks, and I come to Python, my brain would be, all right, well, I need to look at the length of this. How do you do that? You look it up in Python, you figure out you can set ranges, and somebody might do something insane like this. Or this. That's what I want to see. Subscribe. Am I losing my ever-loving mind? I sure am. There we go. Oh no! What happened? That's not all of them.
It's because you started at 1.
That's right. Now I can get them all. But what I have also seen is people will start at 1 and then do something fancy like this. Well, oh no, what happened?
It went
They see
beyond
I've
the
got-
range, yeah.
Yeah, they went out of range. Seems like a simple thing to happen, but if you're trying to one-to-one JavaScript over to Python, this happens to everybody. And if it hadn't happened to you, then it will someday. But you can use ranges. I'm not saying don't use ranges. I'm saying come in JavaScript over to Python, and you got that iteration looping, problem set. A lot of people get into Python and are like, I just want to go back to JavaScript. It makes more sense. Without really keeping track of or really understanding the differences and why Python's just got different ways to do that. If you want the index of each element in the list, you can pass the length of the list to range, kind of similar thing. So we'll just copy it over. Keep all that there. That's a good example. So for I in range, and again, remember range can start with 1. And I was actually alluding to it. You can take, whatever number you want. If we just look at the length of this list, it should start at 0 and go to the end. Didn't print. Whoa, what's going on here? Yeah, that's not hopeful. Why is it trying to? It's a bad example. I need to leave a note for myself to fix this example. I don't like it. Ooh. Why'd that turn green, y'all?
List is a reserved word, I think.
Absolutely. And we want to know what that means. Usually, if you highlight something, is mine not going to be helpful?
Just creates a list.
It just creates a blank list, right?
Yeah, if you use like list range, it would turn the range into a list.
Absolutely. I don't know why my hovering over it doesn't explain that out. Usually it kind of blows out a little bit. This is a fresh VS Code install.
What does the Python word do in this case?
Python?
Do
Probably
you
nothing.
see? Well, after your for instruction on the next line, you got Python
Oh,
first.
because
Yeah.
I am
That's what-
dyslexic and I was trying to do that. There we go. So it works just fine. List plus the iterator. If you set a range equal to the length of the list, that can work too. Doesn't look very JavaScript-y, which I don't. You will see the word Pythonic. You will hear people say Pythonic. You'll never hear somebody say JavaScript-y, but that's the only way to describe JavaScript-ish behavior, unless there's a JavaScript aficionado here who knows more about it. Finally, enumerate. What if you want the index and the value? You can sure get that done. Not unlike a for each iteration in JavaScript, which I didn't cover today, but we'll probably cover it this week as we do higher order functions. Oh, goodness gracious. Doesn't work out of the box. We'll steal that from here. I don't know truly why we need to do it this way. You will find times that that's a good idea. If you really want both of them and you want to reference them this way, but we can pull the name and we can also pull I. So check this out. This is what I'm trying to show. This is what I'm trying to show. That does happen. Let's do this. Is that gonna break? Is that bash taking over in my head? Does that work, y'all? Sure does. Oh. So that's just adding that. That's fine. Why is that happening? Because we're fixing it at that point. Interesting. Okay, just want you to know the point is we've got the index and we've got the value. Nothing crazy going on here. Want to use them both. This is an option. I'm not going to sell you enumerate over just taking a range. It's all how your brain works with it. There are reasons to enumerate. I'm just showing you that these tools exist.
I guess maybe enumerate would be good for if you're trying to also have the index of something as well as the name. Like
Yeah,
so you can
true.
jump around it.
This isn't a great example of it. Maybe I mean, this is not a real, I can argue that this is just as good because I don't need the name if I have this, right? If I want the index, I have I. If I want the name, I have list I. But keep it concise. Maybe this makes more sense. This is, easier to read, I would say, arguably. Maybe I wanted to output something like, your place in line. Then we're going to do something, I, they. There. That's their index and their value. You can do it that way. That's pretty concise. I is index, generally speaking. That's not going to be very helpful. You can do that. If you want it more verbose, this is fine. I is not a protected letter or anything like that. All how you want to look at it. Maybe I'm iterating through two different lists using an enumeration, possibly, and referencing. There's just tools to kind of help you blow it out in a way that makes sense to you. You could check out Stack Overflow and why would I ever enumerate if I could just use a range? And I'm sure people have a lot of strong opinions on it. I do not. I'm just telling you it exists. Dictionaries. I like the word dictionaries and I don't like the word objects, but I'm going to always call them dictionaries, even if I'm working in JavaScript and that's not what they're called. I don't like it, I don't like calling something an object in a language that's object oriented. It seems like not very, specific. Talking about dictionaries, I'm definitely talking about a key value pair. Talking about objects, I'd be talking about a lot of different things. But JavaScript calls them objects. In the examples above, we're mostly using lists. If you want to directly access a particular value in a list, you need to know its index. Yeah, we know that. Let's say that instead of just a list of names, we have a more detailed representation of each person. Bob might look like this. Bob, name, 15, hobby, skiing, falling, getting up. It's kind of mean. Now, if we want to know something about Bob, we use meaningful name key to grab it. Bob's name will be Bob name. Makes sense. Compare this to Bob as a list. Heck with that. I don't want to keep track of that. Dictionaries rule. Bob is a list and Bob's a dictionary. Both contain the same information, but Bob as a list just doesn't seem as easy to work with. I concur. You first start learning how to code, something like this makes just as much sense as this. It's like, why would I ever learn of dictionaries? I got lists here, but this sucks. If I wanted to know his hobbies, I would have to, Bob index 2 and iterate through index 2 as a separate list. Not ideal. We can loop through dictionaries, just as we did up here. We can do the same thing in Python. Anything JavaScript can do, Python can do better. Here we go. Bob, he's 15, skiing, falling, getting up. Sally, 31, sailing, swimming, not drowning. Jeez, Frank, 85, tennis, running, grunting, falling, getting up. These aren't nice. How would we get a greeting from each person? We start by putting each person in a list. Ooh. So we got a bunch of different dictionaries. We can just grab them, slap them into a list. They've already been created, so that's why that works, right? So each of these have been instantiated. These are variables. These are the names. If I wanted to mix them all up, I could do this. I could also save some lines. You know, do this, which is how it's, you know, typically what I would see. It's not as clean, but that's the same thing, right? I didn't create an extra new line. I didn't add all this extra stuff. I didn't reference stuff that already exists. This is the same thing. Do you understand? However, it's a lot easier to quickly iterate through that. We'll quickly see it. Then we will loop over the people list and access every person's name. So for person and people, print. Using our format strings, each person, each value, each instance in this list is a person. Because this is key value pairs, if you plug in the key, you'll get the value. So person name says hi. Oh gosh, what happened? Oh,
You made the whole thing an array.
I sure did. Well, that's why my solution wouldn't work. It's not the exact same thing. However, this should work, right? Does this work? Is this fine? There we go.
If you instead of made an array and made it a dictionary, would that have been what you were looking for? People as a dictionary, not an array?
No, you can't have equals set. Equals is just setting a variable. I can't have variables within a variable. I can have key value pairs within a variable, but this is the only variable. You can't do any. There's none of this allowed, right? That's just setting a variable within a variable, which dies immediately. Oh, set that. If these were one massive dictionary, does that still work? I don't know. We're getting crazy with it now.
And then you just set each one of those dictionaries to be a key value. So Bob would be a key value of all his information. Am I on the right track here? Basically a dictionary of dictionaries.
Yeah, you'd have to get away with something like this, right? Can't really. And then it's, yeah, we're getting a little too experimental with this, but
I'm a little bit confused. Even if it's just a list, how does it read? It's like it read it like a dictionary, but it was a list. That confused me how that worked.
it wasn't. It was a list of dictionaries, right? So I ran ahead a little bit. I got too excited. These are three variables: Bob, Sally, Frank. They each are dictionaries. I have created a new variable here called people. Each of these are still just dictionaries. So if I want to iterate through them, we don't need no stinking lecture. For person in people. Each one of these is going to be an instance of this object. I don't think Python likes printing entire dictionaries. Am I wrong? Do I need to stringify these? Let's see what happens. Check it out. Each person is the full-blown dictionary, right? So what we were getting, we wanted the name. We just got the name.
But that still worked when you had that whole thing as a list, when you had the square brackets around it. That's what confused.
That was no different. Look, all right, so I'll just move some code around. Bob, Sally, Frank. That's repeated code. We already have Bob, Sally, Frank. So I'm just gonna leave this bracket down here. I'm gonna take all this, slap it up here, and the only thing I need to do now is get rid of that. Bob. Sick. Does that work? Still works. So all I did was, instead of creating a new variable, right? Instead of this adding people down here, I took away the variables entirely.
I got it.
Instead
It's
of-
person name. I was thinking about people name, and I didn't understand how you could go people name and read it. It was the person in people. Okay, I missed that. Sorry.
No worries. I tend to get too excited.
Woo!
That's my problem.
You're good at what
Coding
you do.
is so cool. I love coding so much. All right, list comprehension. We're going off rails. Y'all give me another 10 minutes. We all good? I mean, I got it pulled up over here, but so list comprehension, I think, goes into this a little bit, because we are iterating. It is a loop in a way, but list comprehension is useful if you want to take a list and make a different list out of that. People list. In fact, we'll just keep that short. So we're going to add, these Jordans here. Gotta probably make that faster. Oh, and the rarest of us. Here's a list. I want to trim this down. Oh, this is a really bad example, actually. I was trying to be silly with it, but that ain't gonna work. All right, here's some random names. What if this list was 1.5 miles long, and I only want people who have the letter A in their name? I want a new list. I want the A team, the A team. We could, right? We know how to loop. Looping's no problem for people. Oops. For person in people. If A in person, well, we're gonna need a new list, won't we? So A team is gonna be empty. A team dot append person. I'm typing without checking any of my work. Does that work? Ooh, we need to console dot print, not console dot log. Print A team. Get rid of all this junk. Sick. That works, right? Pretty cool. And totally fine. However, we can do something else. I don't need all this junk. I'm just going to create a new list right here. It's already here. This variable is already here. I don't like seeing variables just get created and left around, especially when they're not useful. one thing I'll do at some point is do technical challenges, and I'll rip into y'all for creating random variables because I don't want to see them. It's silly. Waste of space, waste of lines. We don't care about waste of space and waste of lines, but I do care about, random variables just sitting around, not doing anything. We could instead, and don't lose your mind on this. I know we like good variable names. This isn't a good variable name. Mhm. Ba, ba, ba. That's a 4. This is person. In fact, let's do it that way. Person is the variable name. This is what sets that variable. For person and people, if A is in person, put it down here. Is that going to work? Are we confident? Don't know what I'm doing? Hey. That's list comprehension. Some people love this. Some people do not love this. Man, that's clean though, right? If this makes sense to you, do it. If it does not, don't do it. I like this. It can be very handy. It can shorthand. You can shorthand a lot of stuff with this. You can list comprehension to a list of comprehension to a filter to all kinds of crazy stuff. Keep it short. Keep it easy. But I know what I've said and always will say is like, I want good variable names. When you're doing something like this, this is acceptable. No one's going to come look at your code and say, what the heck is X? This is list comprehension. This is conventionally what you would do. They know X is what you're referring to. Whatever the instance of whatever is, X is the instance. It's just a matter of convention. I remember when I was getting into Ruby, I was seeing a lot of for key value in person, stuff like that. And I was like, this is bad code. What the heck is K and V? That's ridiculous. You should have full things. And I went and I fixed it all. And I fixed it all. And I showed it to my manager. And I said, yeah, this person had really bad variable names. And he said, well, that's conventional Ruby. And I wrote that code. And I was like, I mean, and I stood my ground, which I think, I still work here. So obviously that was okay. But ask a lot of questions. Check commit history before you go bad mouthing somebody. It was a internship program, or it was an internship project. Other interns had worked on it. Lots of other interns had come through. So I assumed it was an intern that worked on it. I did not understand that it was his personal kind of pet project and he was letting us work on it.
Was that the day you learned about get blame?
Yes, it is actually. All right. That's it for the lecture. I already have recorded more than I should have for this lecture. I usually rant afterwards. Any questions, comments, concerns?